Hi, guys. It's good to be back. This week in XY Be a Man, we're going to talk about truth number 13. You were created to be in relationship. You see, life is all about relationships, a vertical relationship and a horizontal relationship. God wants you to be in relationship with Him and with each other. God created us to be in relationship. First and foremost, He created us to be in relationship with Him. When He first created Adam, it was just Adam and God in the garden. Think about that for a second. There was a period there where first God created the garden and it was just himself. So he created the Garden of Eden as his earthly abode. Then he put Adam in there, and there for a period of time there, it was just Adam and God. And I don't even know exactly how long that is, but could be very short depending on how you interpret those scriptures. But that says a lot about God, doesn't it? That he created us to be in relationship with him, not just us to be in relationship with him, but him to be in relationship with us. He's a relational God. And then God saw that Adam was lonely. And I think that was maybe because God couldn't be with Adam in person at all times. And so Adam's lonely, and God created a partner from Adam named Eve. And Adam and Eve were in intimate relationship with each other. And so, from the very beginning of creation, very beginning of time, we see that the focal point of creation is being in relationship with God and each other. In fact, the whole universe is in relationship with each other, connected with each other. You see, the law of quantum entanglement in quantum physics states that relationship, connection, is the defining characteristic of everything in space and time. Everything and everyone is connected at the subatomic quantum level, and we will affect each other. Because of the pervasive nature of the entanglement of atomic particles, the relationship is independent of distance and requires no physical length. Two entangled particles have behave as one even when far apart. There is no space time dimension. This is pretty cool stuff. This is how God can be in multiple places at once. But this also has implications for connection with us as people. So our prayers, our thoughts, our attitudes, our actions impact everyone around us and vice versa. Now, some of you think, well, how is quantum entanglement even possible? How is this, connection, everything connected in the universe possible? How does this really work? Well, I think of this. Think of a grid. Remember when you were a kid and you had grid paper and you would do like an XY axis thing on there when you were taking math class? Imagine a grid, but now kind of instead of it being on a piece of paper like this, there's a grid that goes throughout the universe at the subatomic level. And literally that grid connects us. It goes through us. Think of like radio waves and other things kind of flow through us, but think of a grid connecting all of us together at the subatomic level. Now, some people say, well, that's gravity that connects us. I say it's like a God particle. It's like the Spirit of God manifesting at a subatomic level, connecting us all in some way, causing us to all be in relationship in some way. So science is now proving what we all already knew, that somehow we are all connected. There's scriptures that talk about being connected in the spirit. No man according to the flesh, but according to the spirit. And so the Spirit of God somehow, literally in the, realizable matter in this space and time, connects us together. And so we're connected there. That's God's plan for creation, that we be in connection, that we be in relationship. And his word confirms that. His creation confirms that. His plan for you is to be in relationship with others. Ecclesiastes 4:9-12 says, two are better than one because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, one will lift up his companion. But woe to him who is alone when he falls, for he has no one to help him. Again, if two lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one be warm alone? Though one may be overpowered by another, two can withstand him. And a threefold cord is not quickly broken. You see, being together in relationship with other people makes life so much better, right? We're stronger. We're more successful. We're happier. We're healthier. we're safer. That's really what this Ecclesiastes passage is saying. But unfortunately, guys, many of us have this independent mindset, this self-sufficiency that tells us we can do everything we need to do on our own without much help from others. And, it's really interesting. You couple like this natural independence that guys have, along with, especially if you're like an American guy, a U.S. guy, right? We have this very, independent culture here. So you combine an independent culture with an independent biological makeup, and we end up with guys who isolate themselves, right? That's our natural tendency, to isolate ourselves and live in our own little worlds. We might have a wife and a few kids, even a dog. We might have some work buddies or some bar buddies. We might have some church friends. But our relationship with most of these people is shallow. It's not deep. It's not meaningful. Instead, guys, what I see is our interactions with people oftentimes tend to be more transactional rather than relational. And when we hear the term transactional, immediately, right, we think of transacting business with someone, like buying a car or entering in a contract to buy a house. And that's in many ways how our relationships with other people really are at their core. We're in a relationship with someone to get something out of the relationship or the person. We view relationship as a means to an end, not the end itself. So, for example, guys, do you have a relationship with your wife to just get stuff from her, to get sex from her, to have her cook for you, to take care of your house? Or do you really have a deep personal relationship with your wife and know what makes her happy and sad, what she likes to do? Do you talk with her? Do you really care about her? Do you really care what she thinks? Or with your kids, are you just living vicariously through your kids? My kid's going to be the next great basketball player, a great hockey player, or my kid's going to go to Harvard. Many of us dads are looking at our kids as a way to fulfill an unmet need in our lives, to feel important or accomplished. And so our kids are means to an end. But instead, we should look at our children as sheep that God has placed in our hands to shepherd, to lead, to mentor, to love, and have a personal relationship with. We have surface transactional relationships with people at work to advance our careers. We have surface transactional relationships with people at church to advance our spiritual influence and feel spiritually important. But do we really care what's going on with Brother John or Susie, Sister Susie at home, and the struggles they're facing? Do we know anything about them? Do we know their kids' names? Do we know where they work? Do we know what they like to eat? Right? Or do we just have this surface relationship where we see them on a Sunday morning and give them a couple high fives and, it's great to see you, brother. Or we call them every once in a while if we have a need. Do we use people as a means to an end? Guys, today, God wants us to come alongside of other men, encourage them, lift them up, do life with them, help each other through their struggles. And so he wants you to have meaningful relationships with others, not just transactional relationships. So if you're looking at your friends as a way to gain influence, or your wife as someone who does stuff for you, or your kids as a way to live vicariously through or to accomplish some ends through, I'd encourage you to change your approach to your relationships. Look for ways to truly understand the people around you, to encourage them, to do life with them, to have meaningful conversations with them, to uplift them, help them in the time of need. You see, guys, when we do not have meaningful relationships with others, we will find ourselves isolated. Because we're naturally independent, we think we can do everything on our own and that we don't need other people. And then when things don't go the way we want them to go, we isolate ourselves. So when your wife and you get into a big fight, you think, I don't need her. I can take care of myself. So you isolate yourself. Or maybe you think, I'm sick of fighting with my wife, or I'm sick of fighting with my parents, and I want to avoid conflict, so I'm going to isolate myself. I'm going to move out. I'm going to move on. Or maybe we believe the lie that others around us will be better if we're not around, so we isolate ourselves. Or we isolate ourselves because we don't want to hurt other people. Again, there's so many reasons we isolate ourselves, guys. But because of that instinct in us to be independent, we naturally gravitate towards isolation, even when things are going just fine in our life. So it's one thing when you're in an adversarial relationship with someone, or things aren't going well, you're fighting with people, you're not getting along, people have hurt you, to isolate yourself from them. But it's even for guys when things are going well for us, right? We just have this natural inclination tendency to isolate. So, for example, I know many of you guys love to go into the woods and hunt, and this weekend they're literally going to be more men in the woods with guns than deer. At least that's what I think most of you guys are going to think, right? And many of you guys, there's going to be probably 500,000 hunters out there, 500,000 hunters out there trying to land that 10-point deer, and that's not a bad thing. But what happens, guys, is, we don't just go out there for that opening day weekend. When we're not gun hunting for deer, we're bow hunting for deer. And when we're not hunting deer, we're hunting bear, turkey, wolf, coyote. Oh, squirrel. Definitely need some more squirrel hunters out there, at least in my yard. I could use some squirrel hunters in my yard. But in Wisconsin in particular, where I am from, Wisconsin is the biggest hunting state in the United States. This year, over 4.5 million hunting licenses, tags, permits, and stamps have already been issued in Wisconsin. So we love to hunt here. Now, some of you are like, why is Wisconsin the biggest hunting state? I know I'm going off track a little bit here. Well, Wisconsin's also the biggest drinking state. So kind of do the math on that one, connect the dots on that one, right? Hunting, drinking. Hunting is a good excuse to drink. But guys, in all seriousness, while it's fun to hunt and spend some weekends, a few weekends a year hunting with our buddies, it's not God's plan, destiny for your life to spend every weekend hunting. And I know guys who literally, man, they're going every weekend hunting. God doesn't want your wife to be a permanent hunting widow. Maybe just an opening day hunting widow, right? You see, guys, when we isolate ourselves from our families, whether it's hunting every weekend or hanging out in the garage after work every night, working on our cars or other projects that we have, or spending the night surfing the net, or going to the bars instead of home, or playing on 5 different softball teams, we are neglecting and even abandoning our families. I know that you may not have the intent to neglect or abandon your family when you isolate yourself doing these other things, but that's the practical effect of isolating yourself. Others around you feel neglected and abandoned. Now, I know some of you might think your family is better off without you, but I want you to know that's a lie from the pit of hell, guys. God wants you there with your family. You are so important to your family. You're so important to your wife, your kids, your friends, your parents. You are important to the people around you. So don't believe those lies that you're not, that people don't like you, that people don't want to be around you. Guys, no man is an island unto himself. No man can survive as an island unto himself, isolated, regardless of the reasons for being isolated. You see, when we isolate ourselves, we become lonely. And when we're lonely and isolated and separated, there are so many negative consequences to that. Unfortunately, we have a loneliness and isolation epidemic in America. In particular, really, it's among our men and it's among our women. A recent study by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services shows that 57% of men and 59% of women reported being lonely. So we have this problem. It's pretty much equal between men and women, and it's over a majority of the population has this feeling of isolation and separation. This same study shows that social engagement has dropped by more than 40% in the last 20 years. What I mean by that, most people spend less time in person with their family and friends. Church attendance has plummeted. Only 47% of Americans now belong to a church compared to over 70% just a little over 20 years ago. Engagement in civic clubs has plummeted. Marriage rates have dropped. 29% of people now live alone, which is a pretty high percentage of people, nearly 30% of the population living by themselves. The flip side of this is, of course, people are spending more time by themselves. Much of that time is on social media. But time on social media, scrolling through your Instagram feed or Facebook feed, is not the type of interaction that's going to create meaningful relationships with others, right? That is a surface level kind of relationship. Now, we're not also just spending a lot of time on social media, right? We're spending a lot of time binge watching movies and shows on Netflix and whatever, Amazon. And it's interesting. I think people do that in some ways because they do get this pseudo form of relationship with the characters in the movie or show we're watching. But again, that is not true authentic relationship. We get the feeling of being in relationship when we watch TV or a movie and we're engrossed in this series, and we get to know the people. I have to admit, I'm guilty of this with one show. It's called Gold Rush. And it's about these guys in Alaska and the Yukon, Canada, who, they're digging for gold. And I think there's like 13 seasons. I have watched every season of this. I know these characters, man. I know Tony and I know the guys, all these, yeah, there's a guy from the Milwaukee area, Rick, and it's just funny. There's all these guys on there, and you're like, I know that guy. You kind of start to feel like you know the guy, but they don't know you from Adam, by the way. You're not going to pick up the phone and call them if you have a problem, right? I see the same thing like with, people going to church on the internet right now. It's like, oh yeah, man, I love Bill Johnson from Bethel. He's amazing. I'm like, yeah, but when you're sick, is Bill Johnson going to pray for you? When you're in the hospital, is Bill Johnson going to come visit you? When you're getting married, is Bill Johnson going to marry you? When your family member dies, is Bill Johnson going to bury him? Right? I mean, this is the reality. We have this pseudo kind of relationship with TV characters and people that we see on the internet and these social media influencers, but we don't really have true meaningful relationship with them. You see, God really created us to be in face-to-face interaction with other humans. That's how God created us to be, right? In relationship, face to face with people. And unfortunately, the negative effects of loneliness and this social isolation, this social separation are staggering. At a societal level, the social fabric of America is coming apart, even crumbling. Only 30% of Americans trust other Americans right now. That's crazy. I mean, 70% of Americans don't trust the people around them. That distrust leads to separation, disunity, misinformation, demonization, social dishevel like rioting, looting, increased crime. And so we see all these negative high-level social effects from social isolation. But at an individual level, we also see that loneliness and social isolation increase the risk to our health significantly. They increase the risk for premature death by 29%. Social isolation increases the risk for premature death as much as smoking up to 15 cigarettes a day. That's crazy to think, like, if you're socially isolating yourself from the rest of the world, it's the equivalent on your health of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Social isolation increases the rate of heart disease by 29%, stroke by 32%, dementia by 50%. We see increased risks of anxiety, depression, sleep disorders, weight problems, substance abuse. Right? All of these things significantly increase when we are lonely and isolated. Academic achievement, performance at work significantly drop when we're isolated. The impact of social isolation on families is equally devastating, right? We see increasing rates of divorce, infidelity, abuse, suicide. So, guys, today, if you're living isolated lives, I want you to take that first step of faith and reach back out to your kids, reach back out to your wife, talk to your parents, reconnect with your estranged friends. You see, God doesn't want you to be isolated. He wants you to be in relationship. And most importantly, he wants you to be in a relationship with him, and he wants to be in a relationship with you. So today, guys, if you're estranged from God, if you've isolated yourself from God, I just want to encourage you to just say a prayer today. Just say, Lord, I want to be in restored relationship with you. God, I don't want to live an isolated life. God, I need you in my life. God, restore that relationship with my wife. God, restore that relationship with my kids. God, restore that relationship with my brother or my sister. And just pray that today. And I believe that God is going to restore you into relationship with himself and others. Well, guys, next week we're going to discuss truth number 14. You were created to be a fighter. Real men fight. Fight for what you believe in. See you next time.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for watching this week's episode of XY Be a Man with Mark Arsamke. If you enjoyed this, please leave a like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And please leave a comment as well if you'd like to join the conversation. If you have anything that you'd like to add or any questions you might have, we read all those comments. We would love for you to join the conversation and share the video as well with anyone that you think needs to hear it. We want to get this message out to as many people as possible, so we really appreciate that. Also, if you're listening on our audio platforms, we would really appreciate a rate of 5 stars and a review on those audio platforms. If you could do that for us, that just, again, helps us to get this message out to as many people as possible. More people need to hear this, and we really think that it's an important thing. So if you enjoy this content, we would appreciate those actions from you. Other than that, please join us again next week.